All right, so where do we start? Well, let's start with the phone itself. Now, hopefully you have one of these sitting in front of you. If not, you're just getting some information about which one you want to buy. And I want to point out that the Android operating system is installed on several different makes and several different models of phones that are out there. So whether you're using this, in my case, what I'm actually using is a Samsung Galaxy Note 3. It's a very common, very new one, kind of big size so I can actually write on it and things like that. Maybe you're using an LG, maybe using the S4. The Android operating system is the same across all of those different phones. Our goal is to give the operating system some information, give you some information on the Android system, not this specific phone. But just know that as we go through some of these functionalities, they may or may not be available on your particular phone based on hardware limitations or actual phone limitations. So anyway, there's my disclaimer. Attorneys are checked off. Great. Well, where do I start on this phone, on this Galaxy Note phone that I have? Well, I'm going to start with the actual physical layout and the buttons that I may come across. When I look at the actual device, of course, there's my screen. And I'm going to come back and talk about my screen in a minute. But if I flip it over to the right-hand side here, I have this narrow silver bar here. This narrow silver bar is my sleep and wake button. And when I press it, very simply, it puts my phone to sleep. If I press it again, it's going to go ahead and wake my phone back up. As I'm doing this, you'll notice that it's going to put my screen to sleep, bring it back up. We'll come talk about this lock screen that's here in just a few minutes. If I go ahead and roll the phone up and take a look at the top edge of the phone, you'll notice that I have a couple of holes. Well, the hole I'm most concerned with right now is this large one right here. And that's my headphone jack. That's where if I have headphones or I have a headset, that's where it's actually going to physically plug in. It's also here on some of your old school cars that don't have an actual Bluetooth adapter. You can plug that in, plug it into your radio, and listen to the music off your device as well. So that's the top. And if I go over here to the left-hand edge, the left-hand side of this phone, you notice there's another bar. This bar is a little longer, and it's located near the top. Well, the reality is that's not just a bar. That's actually it's a rocker switch, up and down. And this is my volume. If I press on the top, it takes the volume up. If I press on the bottom, it takes the volume down. One thing I do want to point out, with today's phones, buttons typically do multiple functions. In this case, because we're trying to limit the number of buttons I have to press, depending upon the application that I'm using on the actual phone, those buttons are going to do different things. I just mentioned that it's an up and down volume for music or the ringtones or things like that. But if I'm in the photo application, if I'm taking a picture, that's my telephoto and my zoom out buttons as well. So it's got multiple functionality. And as we go through these different applications and kind of get you up to speed on what's going on, I'll point out that, yeah, that's the volume button, which is now acting as zoom in, or that's the volume down button, which is your zoom out. So as we go through that, I just want to point that out. Now, if I go to the bottom, you'll notice that I have a series of openings here. That's for my charging and sync cables. Charging cable, pretty straightforward. Plug it into the wall, plug it into the thing, charges the battery. And yes, they do still run on batteries. That cable is going to charge the phone. But what it's also going to give you the opportunity to do is to do something called syncing. If you're not familiar with the term syncing means, it means synchronizing the data on your phone with the data that's on your computer. So maybe you want to back up, maybe you want to connect to something, maybe you want to use that internet connection. The point is, it's going to allow you to connect this phone or this device to the computer through a series of applications that are on your computer. Now, if you're familiar with iTunes, that's probably one of the most common syncing devices. The iTunes sits on either your PC or your Mac, and it connects through a syncing cable to your particular device so that you can get the music from iTunes onto your phone. There are lots of other syncing devices. Microsoft's got some tools. There's probably some that came with your phone. Just want to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. The other thing I want to point out for this particular phone, and here's where some of those changes in terms of hardware come in. On the Galaxy Note, there's actually a pop-out stylus that is available as well. Now, a couple things you'll notice is when I pulled the stylus out, the first thing that happened is my lock screen opened up. It automatically unlocked my phone because I've pulled out my stylus. The second thing that it did is it gave me a menu. Now, I'm not going to do anything with this menu, but just know that this stylus that you have with your phone, or in this case my Galaxy Note, is very specific, and it allows me to do additional things on my phone in terms of interacting with it and seeing what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back in there. You notice that that menu disappears. Now I'm back to my main screen that I've got moving forward. So there we are. We've covered the edges of the phone. Let me go ahead and switch to the back here. Pretty straightforward. It's telling me in this case I'm actually on T-Mobile. So that's the service that I'm using. That's another thing to point out. Your phone doesn't necessarily mean your carrier. In this case, it could be a T-Mobile carrier, it could be an AT&T carrier, it could be Verizon, could be Sprint, could be AO, could be any one of the providers out there. The phone just connects and has a code in it that allows it to use the wireless network. So if somebody says, well, you've got a Verizon phone. No, I have a Galaxy Samsung Note that happens to be on the Verizon network. So if my contract's up, I can take it with me. It's my phone, right? Just change it over. Now, there are some limitations. Talk to the carrier and figure out what's going on there. But on the back here, you'll notice that there's this area right here at the top, and that's two things. The first thing is my rear-facing camera. It's my camera that I can use to take photos. That's this area right here. Just below it, this white or lighter area, is my flash. Actually, Samsung has given us a nice flash so that when I am in low-light situations, I can still take photos. So my cousin Ed is over there at a late-night get-together for a family reunion, and he's doing something very silly or he's fallen asleep. I can still take a photo of him even though it's just a candlelit processional that we've got going on. You kind of get the idea there. See what's going on. Okay, so that's the back. If I go ahead and flip it over, I'm going to go back and take a look at the front of the screen of the phone. Now, obviously, this is my touch screen LCD. Things on here, they move. I can adjust things. My finger becomes my pointer. Remember, I can also use on this particular device that stylus as well. What I want to draw your attention to is down here at the bottom. When I go down here at the bottom, the main thing you see here, that's my home button. If I get off and I'm looking at something else and I want to get back to my home screen or my starting point, I simply press that button. Think of that as your back to Kansas button. If you get lost, you're in the middle of doing something, you got 6 ways to Sunday, you're like, oh, how do I get back? Press the home button and that'll take you exactly that, home, so that you can get to whatever you need to do next. Now on either side of the home button, in the black area there are two additional what are called haptic buttons. They react to your finger. So if I look at the right-hand side, notice that it pops up. It's kind of a reverse arrow. That's my back key. So if I'm doing something and I want to go back a step, I simply hit that button to go back a step. On the left-hand side, I have my menu. If you think about your Windows machine or your computer that you have at your desk, you've got a left mouse and a right mouse. Left mouse is to select or to click on something. I do that with my finger. Well, how do I do the right click? How do I get that contextual menu to pop up? Well, in this case, that's the menu on the left-hand side. That's the button over there on the left. That will bring up my menu that I can use to change things or select things on the application that I'm in. And the beauty of having it as a software button is that it can change based on the application that I'm using. So as we go through these things, depending upon what I'm trying to accomplish, the menu items that I have here will change. So in this case, I've got things like setting wallpaper, settings for the phone, creating folders, adding apps and widgets. All of that we're going to talk about later. Just know that that's how I get to that particular menu item. And we'll come back and talk about those things later on as well. So there you go. There's your brief introduction to the phone. And by the way, where's my speaker? Yeah, right there. Because what do? I hold it to my ear. Which means where's my microphone? Yeah, it's somewhere down here. The reality is you don't need to know for sure what hole does what. Just know that when you're looking at your phone, where the word Samsung is in this case, that's where it goes to your ear, and your microphone is down at the bottom. All right. So there you go. Now your phone may be different. The Android operating system is what we're going to focus on.